It is one of the most embarrassing, pathetic displays of a Maglia Rosa defense I have ever seen. Welcome back to Spin Cycle, Johnny Long.
The Brits are back.
The bravest British boy. The bravest British boy.
We're back. We're back. Pledge your allegiance to the flag. Huge. Simon Philip Yates.
Simon Philip Yates. Sir, he's not sir yet. Not sir yet.
Should be.
He will be imminently now, right? You guys hand these things out like... No, I'm not going to go there. Well, welcome back to the show, Kit Nicholson. How are you?
I'm recovering from the weekend. It was a good one.
Yeah, that was a big weekend. Kit is, of course, our weekend web editor, which on a weekend like that,
yeah, I don't want to tell you how much sleep I got this weekend, but it was probably less than the amount of time we'll spend on this call. And that's partly for my own problems with sleep, but I was wired.
Well, Kit, you and I already discussed the solution to this.
Yes, I know.
We'll leave that. Maybe we'll leave that.
We should leave off air. Yeah.
Okay, I want to hear this.
All right, let's talk about the Giro. My goodness, one of the greatest Grand Tours in my Grand Tour watching memory. And I've said this in a number of places, and I had a couple people come back to me, like message me on Instagram or whatever, being like, "No, it's not that good." And I think the primary complaint there was just that we didn't have, like, it wasn't the same thing, but with Pogacar and Vingegaard. I think that was basically the idea, but I don't care. We had the potential for the first ever Mexican Grand Tour victory, and then we had it ripped away on the penultimate stage, on the last real stage of this Giro, by a daring do sort of attack. I saw somebody else, one of our esteemed media colleagues, refer to this as a tactical masterclass. I wrote in my story over the weekend that I think it was more of like Grand Tour fundamentals, which is you stick a rider up the road and they can help out later, because Wout van Aert is not going to get over the Finestre with that front group, but if you give him a head start, then he can absolutely be there. How the race was won broke down a lot of the tactics of that day, of the Finestre day. I think maybe we could talk a little bit about that, but let's just talk more about the sort of like what all this meant for pro cycling at the end of the weekend, and for the individuals involved, because I think that what made this Giro so good and what made this last week and weekend so good was all the intersecting narratives that we got over the course of the weekend, and the fact that they just sort of smashed against each other all in about half an hour on the side of one of the most kind of iconic and aesthetic climbs anywhere in a Grand Tour.
Yeah, I mean, it was, to go back to what you were saying about it being, not Vingegaard versus Pogacar, it's like, with all these storylines coming together, all those storylines included several GC riders, all of whom were in with a shout of taking it, and that stage was gruesome. It was a really, really, really tough stage, and there were, Derek G, I think, probably quite fancied the chance. I don't know how optimistic he really was, but he certainly, he was sitting fourth at the beginning of the day. He at least had his eyes set on the podium. And there were so many people that could have come to the finish and taken pink, and we really didn't know. But yeah, I mean, I've mentioned this before, but a bugbear of mine is when commentators, some of them our good pals and colleagues, but when people say, you couldn't write it. The best script writers in Hollywood couldn't write it. Yeah.
Wait,
and as I wrote,
call him out.
Yeah. Sorry, Rob. Sorry, Rob. We're mates, but I mean,
you can write it. You could write it.
You could write it, exactly. And I wrote in my story.
And the caveat that if we were doing comms for an event like that, we
probably would
far
say
dumber things.
Yeah. But I wrote the story yesterday about Wout and how many times he's now been used as this kind of outrider. I use the analogy of the bat signal being, Batman is called on when all else fails. And that's not necessarily what happens all the time with Wout, but in this instance, Wout van Aert has written this story at least 5 times before, single-handedly. And Saturday, they should have known the other teams should, UAE should have made
Well-
sure that they didn't get far ahead, or it was once Wout was in that move, there was an opportunity, and they absolutely killed it.
So let's try to answer the biggest question. Was that Giro won, or was it lost?
Can it be both?
I think that's the real answer, but
Yeah.
that's not as much fun to talk about on a
No.
podcast. So
I think Yates would have still won, but the margin would have been much smaller if Wout hadn't been.
that's
I think
roughly where I am with it.
Yeah,
That's
you
roughly
can
where
lose
I am with it.
sportingly, right? So like when Geraint Thomas lost to Primož Roglic, that was one that was lost without any sort of embarrassment. I think when Jai Hindley beat Carapaz, right, at that
On the
Giro,
Fidaya.
that had a bit more sort of embarrassment because it was like you just kind of let him ride around and then he beat you right at the end. But then at least, that was in a, mano-mano sort of who's going to go up this climb quicker. We'll figure that out and then that's the winner. Whereas this one was like, I think you wrote in your piece, Kaylee, it's like the fight. Where was the fight? Let's talk about that.
So not to rehash the story that I wrote on Saturday, but it did sum up my thoughts on it. And I think that maybe in my rush to get that story out while watching both of my children, which is how my Saturday morning went, I wasn't totally clear on when I was talking about, which is on the Finestre itself, on the climb up the front side of it, there was plenty of fight. Right, like I think you could maybe look at Del Toro and say, you could have taken some pulls with Carapaz on the way up as well, but you could also very easily at that point say maybe he's just hanging on for dear life because it's at the end of 3 weeks and he's 21 years old and he.
But then he sprints at the end.
but like
It is a different effort.
Yeah, if you're the sort of punchy rider physiologically, you kind of always have that punch left. I mean,
You've also had 30 kilometers to recover. Almost.
Yeah, I'm a horrible example of that, but like when I was racing, I was a type of rider like that. I could kind of always sprint even if you're totally fucked.
But I just wouldn't do it, Like I think for optics' sake, I probably would just be like, I'm just going to pedal in and then that's it.
But here's my thing. Yeah, on the way up the Finestre. Okay, so they Carapaz and Del Toro are chasing. And yes, Del Toro should be doing some more work there because his lead is riding away from them, and he should at least try, right? So there's some I don't know issue with the climb. My real issue is as they come over the top. This is where it was extremely obvious that there was either Del Toro making a decision that he shouldn't have made, or a director in his ear telling him something that they should not have told him, and. I'm not the only one saying this. Geraint Thomas on his little podcast was saying the same thing. Robbie McEwen and Matt Stevens.
Little podcast.
His little podcast. Yeah.
I think it's a bit bigger than ours, but anyway.
Yeah.
I don't listen to it. I only ever see the bits that pop up on Instagram.
clips,
So for me, it's very little. It's only about 2 minutes long.
You mean little in terms of length rather than
Snapchat? Yeah.
Fine.
Anyway, so Geraint Thomas, they've all said varying degrees of the same thing, which is like, that was so weird to watch. I mean, Geraint Thomas said something along the lines of, my 5-year-old knows that if the pink jersey's going up the road, you chase it, right? And as they came over the top of the Finestre, the pink jersey was in the balance, right? I think that at that point, Yates had less than 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Right around 20 seconds gap in terms of a pink jersey gap. So if you had finished the race at the top of the Finestre, then Yates wins the Giro by 20 seconds, which is not that much, right? That is a chaseable gap. By the time they get to the actual finish, it's nearly 5 minutes, right?
Nearly 4.
It's that part of the race that I look at and say, what the hell was UAE doing? Because we also had footage of Del Toro sitting on the hoods, gliding down the backside of the Finestre, looking at Carapaz to pull through. They catch the who was the Alpecin rider?
Timo Kiedek, I think.
Kiedek, they caught Kiedek, and they're like, "You pull," and he's like, "Are you kidding me? Why would I pull you to the finish line?"
So he then went off the front again.
Yeah, none of it made any sense at all. And the most charitable version of this to Del Toro is that there was a director in his ear telling him not to work with Carapaz, and that director needs to be fired immediately. Because it is one of the most embarrassing, pathetic displays of a Maglia Rosa defense I have ever seen. Like ever. And if it was Del Toro, I can excuse it because he's 21 years old. He's blitzed at the end of 3 weeks. He's never been in this situation before. But even if that was the case, then he should have had a director in his ear going,
yeah, that's what they're paid.
You need to at least put your head down and try. Because you might lose by a minute. You might lose by 90 seconds, but you're not going to lose by 5. And you're gonna do the pink jersey proud, and you're going to at least fight for it, because they didn't fight for it, and it was embarrassing. It was really bad.
I think one way that I've kind of tried to rationalize it, or maybe I don't know, try and come up with some sort of excuse that, or assume some sort of excuse that might be afforded UAE, and it's not a good excuse, I might add, but the fact that they have, they are considered one of the best GC teams because of one man.
Yeah.
And that's Tadej Pogačar, who is so good that he can kind of paper over the maybe a tactical. And we may be completely wrong here, but it seems like this is a team that knows what to do when they can absolutely rely on one man to do what he does best.
Well, and they don't need tactics, yeah.
And they don't exactly. They don't need tactics.
Yeah.
So they just kind of set him up, and the finish line for UAE is usually about 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers from the finish line. So it's not as big a deal as for some other teams. But when you actually have to, yes, they were without Jay Vine and Juan Ayuso. Jay Vine, I think he's still recovering from various injuries that he's had over the past year, and obviously Ayuso had a horrible Giro in the end. But so if they'd been fit, then maybe they'd have been able to help. But if they'd been fit, it would have been a different situation.
They still had McNulty and Micah,
but they still had a bunch of people. And Adam Yates. I really hoped that Adam Yates was closer and he could have helped, and it would have been hilarious to have that element of the story as well. But that didn't happen.
Was missing.
But yeah, so it was. To give the, I don't want to give UAE the benefit of the doubt because it's a really bad reason.
I want to give Del Toro the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, that's exactly
where
I was going. Yeah. I want to be able to support his. We say this often. It's like the next ... and we try and it's hard to stop that sometimes. But when you see a rider like Del Toro, kind of essentially come of age, and yes, it was a very disappointing stage 20, but he really has shown himself to be a potentially incredibly exciting prospect for the next five years or so. Maybe, hopefully, it might not happen, but it probably will. But yeah, then he just, I don't know. Yeah, UAE needs to have a look in the mirror, sort some things out.
My main problem is and I don't want to go too Roy Keane here, but it was how contented
go full Roy Keane. I already went full Roy Keane.
Okay, fine. Look, I'm speaking from a position where I've never ridden Grand Tour. I know that the teams and stuff have to celebrate whatever happens because it's so hard to do it all, but that is the job you're paid to do. Okay, you're paid to race the Grand Tour. You're paid to win it. You have the means to win it. And the fact that you kind of throw it away either through negligence or stupidity or whatever, and then to be so content like afterwards and sort of still congratulating yourselves is frankly shocking. It speaks to either it doesn't really matter. Like, I guess Isaac Del Toro finished in second. They said, we would have taken this, in a week in. We'd have definitely
which is still true.
That's not the situation. That's not the relevant situation. The situation is the race was in your grasp and you basically threw it away.
Yeah.
To then, sorry, I'll be quick. To then, it's because like Pogačar wins so much, so there's no pressure from like the backers or anything like that. They win everything all the time anyway. So this doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things. As long as Pogačar wins a tour, they keep winning everything else, fine. But does it speak to the mentality? Like if we're gonna go full like American sports whatever center. Does it speak to a mentality where, like Visma, when they've lost Grand Tours in the past, have been absolutely seething?
Yeah.
They've been furious. They've released documentaries accusing their rivals of doping. They've been so furious at the outcome. Whereas UAE immediately wash it off their backs, and when you're asking them to care about all this
champagne
stuff,
on the podium as they celebrate best team.
Exactly. Which fine, you've done that, but the race wants me to care about it, and for you to not care makes me feel a bit stupid.
If Del Toro had gone from second to third, they could still be very. I would be okay with them being. We earned ourselves a podium.
We tried.
We are tried. We did everything we could.
But then we did all we could to try and rectify it.
But also the delta in between second and third is relatively small in terms of like how important it is. The delta between first and second.
Ricky Bobby paradox.
The Ricky Bobby paradox. If you ain't first, you're last, right? And so they lost the Giro. They did not win second.
Yeah.
They lost the Giro.
It's like Richard Carapaz said. Richard Carapaz, who I think felt really... I mean, did you see on the podium yesterday evening? Richard Carapaz and Del Toro did not shake hands.
They're not? Oh, juicy.
Yeah.
Not when Del Toro... When Del Toro came up after Carapaz had. He walked behind Carapaz. They didn't make eye contact.
Oh,
didn't shake
I missed
hands.
all this.
They didn't interact until Yatesy was on the podium and they came together for the photos at the end. But Carapaz said after... he was really cross. I mean, cross. I don't know if that's an emotion in his arsenal, but he was certainly miffed. But he said in response to, he was quite clipped and quite kind of concise with his responses, as he quite often is. But he said, well, he being Del Toro, he lost the Giro. He didn't know how to race properly, and the smartest guy won essentially, which
is true. which is
and bravest.
Again, I like because I think we like Del Toro and we want to like Del Toro and he's very likable and he's an individual that we want to be able to support and sit here going, what you did was incredible. Because of that, I'm choosing to believe that it was a stupid UAE sport director.
Yeah.
That is what I'm choosing. Can I briefly, before we go on, we should spend some time talking about how incredible Visma and Yates were. That is very much deserved. But before we do that, just a couple of the other sort of tactical blunders of that day. We mentioned Wout, and we're going to talk about Wout in a second, and the fact that they used this satellite rider tactic. That is very, very common. As you said, Kit, they've done it with Wout no fewer than 5 times already. So they probably should have seen it coming. Meanwhile, you've got UAE with 3 riders in the top 13. They've got Micah in 13th, Adam Yates in 12th, and McNulty in 9th. Which means they've got 3 riders who are very easily strong enough to end up in the breakaway that Wout ended up in. Now, part of the issue is like you actually can't send McNulty up in that move because it won't go. Because he's in 9th. And so Movistar will chase it down because they've got Ana Rubio in 8th and they want to protect that 8th place. So part of like the original sin here is the fact that they kind of hedged their bets with 3, at one point 4 different teammates to try to keep them all in and around the top 10 when in fact what you have to do with those riders is you have to drop them. You have to put them half an hour
keep
back.
the gap closer throughout the day so that then you catch them.
But so it was a systemic issue from earlier in the race.
Exactly. So that's mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 is not sending at least somebody. Like, let's be honest, I'm pretty sure that if they had sent Micah, for example, who's 23 minutes back in 13th, if they'd sent Micah back, that it's an 8-minute gap to the top 10 for him. If they'd sent Micah in the group with with Wout, he's probably allowed to go. So they could have done that, for example. That's the sort of like early tactical issue. But then, as you both just alluded to, once that break goes and it's got Wout in it, it does not take a tactical genius to figure out what Visma is doing, right? There's only one reason for Wout van Aert to be in that breakaway. And so all you have to do, because Wout is going to go up the Finestre probably 6, 7, 8 minutes slower than the front GC group, all you got to do is keep that move within that time gap. And they didn't.
They just let EF have their fun.
They just let EF have their fun at the bottom of the Finestre and prior. And as a result, Wout had plenty of time to get over the top of the Finestre, wait in the valley. And then I saw the power numbers that he was putting out. I think Velon put him out. He did something like 450 something watts for the 12 minutes across the valley. And that right there, it is impossible. Even if this is where you come back to like, okay, well, Visma just straight up beat him. Even if Del Toro and Carapaz are riding, you are not keeping up with the Wout motorbike across the valley toward the finish line. So the original sin is not preparing for that eventuality. I still think it's embarrassing not to have at least fought for it and not to kept it within 90 seconds or a minute or something like that, and have that pink jersey ripped off your shoulders, not given away. That's still embarrassing. And the end result is the end result, which brings us to, we need to spend some time talking about how Simon Philip Yates, spent basically 3 weeks just kind of hiding in the shadows, doing everything he needed to do. He came into that Finestre stage, which, let's not forget, was the stage at which he lost the Giro in 2018. Not just lost the Giro, but like...
is that true? I don't think no one mentioned that over the weekend. That was kind of lost amongst it all.
I feel like maybe a couple of the more esteemed reporters probably mentioned that one, Johnny. No, but like he not only lost the Giro, but imploded. One of the greatest implosions in recent Grand Tour memory. So he has that monkey on his back, right? And he managed to shake that off, do exactly what he had to do on that stage. And Visma itself knew exactly what they had to do. Mark Reef afterward was basically like, yep, that was exactly what the plan was, and we executed it.
Over winter,
Yeah, it was perfect.
Yeah, and what another part of the story, which, yes, so referring back to 7 years ago, Simon Yates raced that Giro kind of like Del Toro has raced the past, well, certainly the first couple of weeks, when he was quite active in the first, and that stage 9 effort and all his bonus sprints. And we don't, I think we're all in agreement that he had at least something else to give on stage 20. He may have been completely gassed, but to get back to Simon Yates, by stage 9 of the 2018 Giro, he had, I think there'd been one time trial and seven road stages, and he'd finished top 10 on all but one, and he'd won one, and he was in the pink jersey, and he then won 2 more stages in the second week. And there was a lot of criticism at the time. This was before Pogačar came along and completely ripped up the rule book. But at this time, it was not the thing to do. You don't go that hard. You don't try and go for every single stage. This time, he raced like an old-fashioned GC rider. He hasn't won a stage. He's just kind of worn away.
I love
that. Yeah,
I've missed riders doing that.
He's just chipped away at and quite quietly. As quiet as you can be when you look like I don't know.
It's very British.
However you look, I was going to refer to the yellow helmet, and he looks like a bowling ball. I think I've used that analogy before, so it's a bit tired. But he's been as invisible as it's possible to be when you're on Wout van Aert's wheel. And he's been, I was remembering on Saturday the day into Nova Gorica in Slovenia when he was positioned perfectly because he was with Visma. And yes, Visma were trying to go for the stage as well, but he was exactly where he needed to be all the time, not doing any more than he needed to until absolutely the moment when it needed to happen. That was a badly put together sentence, but you get the gist. It was old fashioned and kind of, GC textbook, but it was also done in a way that really brought it all together and tied it up very neatly with that fantastic completion of a chapter, as he said himself.
He did, yeah. To be fair, he did say he was bringing that up, so it wasn't the media foisting it upon him. I think heading into the Tour and after the last year that Visma had with just a bunch of bad luck, not really being able to match UAE, it's the perfect, narrative launch pad to get excited about the Tour and hoping that Vingo can match up to Pogačar over the summer. The problem with this Visma, there's still a few question marks because their squad is so beat up still. They pulled out the Tour of Slovenia because they're like, we don't have the riders, and they don't want to risk riders that they might potentially need to draft into other races. So it's given hope to that. It also, we found out that Visma either have some weird internal protocols or definitely did back themselves to maybe win this Giro with Simon Yates, because they rocked up Sunday morning for stage 21 with special pink-black kits to celebrate the win. And not only that, but Richard Plugger had a pink jacket, blazer thing, ready to go.
Very pink.
So very pink. So unless he travels to each final stage of the Grand Tours with the requisite colour jersey, blazer, to wear in case they win, which I wouldn't put past him. And then what else I want to know is whether they always have a special edition kit at the Grand Tours to in case they win it that they're producing. and like mocking up.
Well, we often
and then
see
if it just gets chucked in the bin. So is there like, is there a village
often
somewhere
see
where everyone's watching,
Yes, I mean we run a couple stories on mostly on how the bikes get there.
Yeah.
But it's often like, oh yeah, someone painted the bike yesterday, drove it across all of Europe over the course of like 18 hours, and brought it to wherever the bike needed to be. That actually, my guess is that's how it went down. Who's the kit sponsor for?
They are their own kit
Visma?
provide. They do their own kit now, don't they?
Okay, so they
But who makes the
probably
kit?
straight off the factory.
There's a couple factories in, I think, like Romania that a lot of the high end and I think actually maybe some in northern Italy that a lot of the high end kit manufacturers use.
Perfect.
Most kit is coming from like the same 4 factories these days.
Exactly.
So if they've gotten like everything they need from everybody, they can probably turn that around in 36 hours or so.
Europeans,
but they were
working
within
on a Saturday night though. No, that's where I didn't understand it.
But remember, at the beginning of last week, Simon Yates was within 30 seconds. He was within 30 seconds of Del Toro at the beginning of the third week. So they will have had the designs lined up way before, but they could have very easily. What I found amusing on this same sort of subject is that Rob Hatch let slip on the commentary, and it was by the time it was safe to do so, but he let slip on the commentary that in 2018 he had been lined up by the Lancashire Council or whoever was organising a big homecoming for Simon Yates in 2018. So he'd been booked to go back to the UK and to host a homecoming for the winner of the Giro d'Italia.
We'll never see again.
And of course that never happened.
Question though, Kit, what happened then after that to see Simon Yates lose that Giro? Could the Hollywood script writers have written that? That one's more unbelievable to write.
Well,
I would have forgiven one time. 3 times he said it, and I was just by the end.
He kept going on and on. Yeah.
It was so good though.
It was good.
So the whole weekend was so good, and I think even the whole last week was so good, and it was good because the characters were kind of like playing the character they were supposed to play, right?
Yeah.
Del Toro was being rambunctious and running around and trying to get all the bonus seconds he could possibly get. He's wasting a bunch of energy and all these other things.
Simon Yates was even getting grumpy at his teammates on Friday.
Simon Yates, I mean, on Friday he was pissed off. He was like, that wasn't the plan. That didn't. Because
he lost him time on Friday. Yeah.
I wonder if Friday was supposed to go like Saturday did, right? And somebody didn't get in a move or something didn't happen. We always say, to pivot a bit over to Wout van Aert and how incredible he is, we talk about, I mentioned that the tactic they used is like Grand Tour fundamentals, right? That's very easy for me to say sitting here in the meth camper. Actually getting in that move, getting over the Finestre, finding your teammate on the backside of it, in the chaos of a Grand Tour with the fatigue of 3 weeks of racing in your legs, is genuinely so impressive, and it's made all the more impressive by the fact that UAE couldn't do it, right? Like maybe in the morning that was the plan. Maybe Micah or somebody was supposed to get in that move and they didn't or couldn't, because getting in those moves is not a guarantee. Wout van Aert does it every single time they need him to, and I think one of the biggest marks of a phenomenal rider for me, champion or whatever sort of cliche you want to use here, right, is the fact that, or is when you have a rider who telegraphs what they're going to do, like exactly what they're going to do, and you cannot do anything about it anyway, right? And that's what Wout has done multiple times for his teammates over the course of the last half decade or so in these Grand Tours. Just, incredible stuff. I want to make sure that we're not only being negative about UAE.
No.
That this race, in my mind, like that original question, was this race won or lost? It is almost a 50-50 split, maybe 60-40 won lost for me, right?
Unstoppable force met movable object.
Yes. exactly. Should we do we have any other Giro here to wrap up? Should we
after a little break, I want to talk about the Pope, if that's okay with you.
Let's talk about a good Catholic boy, Johnny Long. Let's talk about the Pope. We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, Johnny's sad he didn't get to meet the Pope. welcome back, everybody. They met the Pope, which a fair number of the riders at the front of this Giro who met the Pope. I'm making some assumptions based off of where they're from. Probably Catholic, right?
Well,
and so kind of a big
Lorenzo
deal.
Fortunato in the blue jersey was definitely.
He was loving it. He was in the Sign of the Cross.
Oh yeah,
loved it.
And Nairo Quintana hung back and was the last. He had a little private moment.
I think Quintana's met him before.
Well, he's met the Pope.
Well, the old one.
But yeah.
Isn't the whole idea that the Pope is always the Pope, even if there's like a different human body in place?
No,
that's,
I don't know, Johnny. You tell me, Catholic guy.
Not quite. But,
no, not quite.
I'm technically Catholic and definitely not actually Catholic, so I don't really know.
I've done my time, so I feel like I can speak on behalf
Johnny,
of the.
You tell us.
So, I don't remember this happening at previous Giros that often. Am I wrong? Have I not been watching the Giro long
It's happened at least once.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe 2012, 2013 it had happened.
Riders have met the Pope before. Like Bernal's met him, Pedersen.
And I'll give him a bike.
Yeah, they give a bike. What's the Pope going to do with the bike? Don't know. But yeah, the Pope was there. They all kind of rocked
take
up.
It to the Northbrook Velodrome in Chicago. That's what he's going
to
do.
do. My favourite stat about the new Pope, because he's obviously born in Chicago but has lived abroad for many years, is that he's probably eaten more hot dogs than all the other popes in history combined, which already sets him. That was already made him top of my list of popes, and then he was there at the Giro, sort of blessing them all or talking at them. Half of them looked so unimpressed. That was great. The best thing about the Pope, though, was the memes, where you had obviously the Pope shaking hands with Isaac Del Toro, and the caption was, I think it's from Mihai Simon, where he said he quoted the Pope as asking Del Toro, why didn't you pull on the Finestre, which is great. Apparently, according to another meme, the Pope told Simon Yates that yes, he'd received the application to give Wout van Aert sainthood. So really, it was a meeting of not quite hobbies but interests, which was great. And Catholic Church was not perfect, but more Catholic Church at the Giro feels like an opinion I can get behind. I would happily see the Pope every year in Rome greet them. It's like having a tour on the Champs. It's the same thing.
I'm willing to respect that. Partly cycling is just an old-fashioned, traditional, slightly backwards sport. Not to say that
perfect.
Italy is too, but and without dunking myself in hot water here, I'm glad that the blessing didn't go too evangelical, which is obviously not the right term.
True.
But it was quite it was I think as restrained and general as it could have been, without
fair enough,
without too much of a recruitment drive, which we've seen from this sort of thing before. Anyway,
I like the riders looking bored though. There were enough riders who looked bored that I think it provided the perfect backdrop of like how everyone's fantastic.
My favourite part of the whole bit was that there was somebody there with the express purpose of making sure that the Pope's little gown thing stayed down in the wind, and he was standing between four blokes in lycra, and it was just such a weird, these Power Rangers and the Pope.
Yeah.
And
what if it had blown up and underneath was just some bike shorts?
Yeah, that would have been wicked.
But yeah, it was anyway. Yeah.
Anyway, that was the Pope. And the other sort of marketing, I guess we'd call it a marketing bit from the Catholic Church. We also had Red Bull, who were making. They made an F1 car do like donuts on the course in Rome.
They really thought Roglic was going to win. That's what they
yeah.
really
well, I guess
they managed to pull Giulio
stuff.
Pellizzari in for the social media.
But at the exact same time that Max Verstappen was like ramming his car into other cars at the Spanish Grand Prix at like 200 miles an hour or whatever. So Red Bull, I would say their stock is low at the minute, and something needs to happen.
Well, they did, but however, Red Bull did sponsor that kilometre, which was a bit of a joke before the Giro, but actually kind of had an impact on the race, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. So Red Bull, they weren't just there for the team. Obviously, they put a bike on the back and it was a team bike and whatever. Yeah. I actually, that was something that I was pretty skeptical about. I don't like it when Grand Tours are won, or at least when they're racing too much for bonus seconds intermediate, before the finish, as a GC rider, But these bonus sprints actually did add something, I think.
I'd say so.
We were pretty
So I
skeptical
think-
before the race.
Yeah, I think actually, yeah, you do you, Red Bull, whatever.
I still think they'd be more fun as like a Strava segment. That'd be way more fun, right? Where you just like you could win them by not being in the front, right?
So you just.
Oh, I see what
yeah.
you mean. So
It's like it's the fastest time over that kilometer.
Wouldn't you then have
Yeah.
crashes in the peloton?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Red Bull loves that stuff.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah.
The other bit of just final, I think, Giro housekeeping is the end of the Mads Pedersen's Malia Ciclamino betting saga thing. So on Friday, it had chatted to Love Island Jacob briefly, who was struggling to find any purple hair dye. So I was like, "You're gonna actually be able to do it?" He's like, "Well, I've been busy. I'm trying to find it." I'm like, I know you have like a couple of hours where you're not really doing much in the day. Like, come on. He did appear on Sunday, fully hair dyed, mustache dyed, and a fun like purple t-shirt he'd made. And by Monday morning, he sent me a selfie where half of the hair dye had like come out of his hair, and he was still wearing the same t-shirt.
Yeah,
So I think
no,
he
he
probably
was
hadn't been to bed.
No,
and he'd been
I'm
celebrating.
sure that was the case. Yeah.
But we actually have a corrections corner, but not for us,
Oh,
for
right.
the cycling podcast.
Which
Which
we
is
do love
super
correcting
fun.
the cycling podcast.
Yes, but mostly because they're usually factually correct and we're factually incorrect. But Mads Pedersen, I mean, it's not their fault. Mads Pedersen lied to them. Where, you know how Pedersen's been collecting the indestructible underwear every day?
Mm-hmm.
Where it comes in that human box or whatever, like
Human, yeah.
underwear, whatever, indestructible underwear. Mads Pedersen said that he'd given all of the pants or the underwear to Jacob. Sorry, I should say underwear, not pants, because you guys think I'm talking about trousers. He gave all the underwear to Jacob, and he is trying to fart the shit out of them, but it's really not working out for him yet. So we'll see, and you have to check back next Giro. Obviously, straight on the blower to Jacob, and he was saying that is fake news and horrible lies. He's not giving me a single pair of underwear, and what's worse is that I'm in desperate need of underwear.
Well, we didn't. Was it earlier in the Giro when somebody had asked the same question, and it turned out he was giving them to Jacopo Mosca, Elisa Longoborghini's husband,
Oh, really?
his teammate. Yeah,
I
who
think
had
we don't
only
really
packed
know where
4
the
pairs
underwear's
of
going.
underwear, and so he needs some. Yeah.
The takeaway from this for me is we don't know where those underwears have gone.
I feel like this is a story that
we're
hasn't
hearing
been
multiple
told.
conflicting stories about the
We
location
need to
of the
know.
underwear.
The only pair of underwear that, I mean, I don't want to see the underwear particularly, but you know, that bloody great blow up pair of boxer shorts at the finish line of every single stage. Why has nobody held them up?
Yeah.
The new pair, the fresh pair, box fresh.
Inflatable underwear and Palestine
This
flags.
is
2025 a bike race.
This is the story that we missed out on this Giro, I think.
There's too much action bike racing. So that was fun.
Yeah.
And the Giro is so good that Mount Etna started erupting. So that's how you know it was a good tour.
Does the Pope do that? Is it a little button lever?
I think that's what Nairo Quintana whispered to him.
All
he
right.
had some short positions on airlines.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, a bit of Unbound, some bit of Norway, and Tibaut Pinot is having a blast. Welcome back, everybody. We're gonna start this segment with some really, really sad news. Johnny.
Yeah. So, okay. So former Visma rider, actually, Robert Hessink, they shared this sad news on Saturday. So kind of a weird time for the team, obviously, that on Friday night, Robert Hessink's wife, Daisy, sadly passed away at the age of 39, having only a few weeks before found like a very aggressive disease. They've also haven't been specific on it, but doctors were like, yeah, can't really do anything. So that was announced on Saturday. So super sad. He retired end of 2024, and the riders at the start of the Giro Sunday stage had like a moment of silence. But yeah, just quite, substantial and shocking news that probably worth mentioning at least. So never met Robert Hessink. Seems like a good guy. Was all his teammates were
man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's sad.
No, Robert. Yeah, Robert's absolutely lovely man. Yeah, never met Daisy, but did see her around at the races a couple different times, and they have at least one young child.
Two.
So two, yeah.
2 kids, yeah.
I don't think I've seen the kids since they were in a pram, as you two would say. Yes, just super, super, super sad news. And our condolences not only to Robert but also the whole team. I mean, those teams do become families, and I think that's what Visma was showing.
And Hessink was a lifetime Visma rider as well. Yeah. He was with that team throughout his career, long career.
Yeah.
Just brutal news.
The next news, I guess, is that Jakob Fuglsang. This came towards the end of last week, I think. Maybe on Friday. I think it was after we recorded the podcast that this Giro will be his final race for Israel Premier Tech, but he will race the Tour of Denmark in August. And I presume he'll be racing for his national team, so that'll be his send off there. But Kit, did you find this quote? Where you read something into it?
Yeah, I mean he stuck around because he was a key part of the Derek GC quest, which has been largely successful. I mean, started at Dauphiné last year where he finished 3rd and then 4th at the Giro. It's pretty good result. But one thing that stuck out to me, and it was probably not necessarily a dig.
read in as much as you want.
But it's hard not to think of a certain someone when you hear every good thing comes to an end and it's time for me to enjoy more time with the family and to let the young guys go ahead. Now it's hard not to see
Roglic, right?
Spectral Chris Froome, or now I guess former teammate, sort of hovering overhead. But so happy retirement, Jakob.
Fuglsang is one of the very, very few riders left in the peloton that was racing prior to me starting doing this job.
Oh.
Wow.
There's not that many left. He started in 2009. My first year covering pro racing for Velo News was 2010. So
here we are.
Yeah.
Are you retiring soon, Kaylee, or not?
Well, that's what makes it so sad, right? Is all these guys are done, and I'm not. I can't even see the light at the end of the tunnel yet.
They're done in one way, but pretty different situation.
Depends.
Yeah. Although Fuglsang may fall in that category of did well enough over the last 15 years to not have to do a whole lot.
Do a couple of years of chilling out, like our friend Tibaut Pinot is.
Drive a Skoda around the Tour de France, like Andy Schleck. Do something like that and go enjoy himself. We should talk about Tibaut Pinot. He was at the Champions League final, which I think is somewhere that, Johnny, I know at least you and I would have loved to have been, mostly because we could have hung out with Tibaut Pinot.
And maybe he was there when we went to watch Villa PSG, and we just never knew.
I bet he was.
Yeah.
I wonder if he was.
Imagine if we'd sat down next to Tibaut Pinot, that would have been quite something. But yeah, he was.
I wonder if you'd be able to keep up with him, because he is obviously been enjoying himself.
He's drinking. Yeah, I dug that photo. That was from December 2023, a different year of the Champions League, when he was just holding 2 full pints up amongst all the ultras at an away game. But yeah, it's just good to check in on Tibaut Pinot every now and then, because every time we get a little update, he's living the best life and doing retirement how he's supposed to. His life has got better since retiring, and his life was already pretty good. He was basically like the king in France.
Yeah, and he looked like it too. He was wearing a heavy crown, I think.
Yeah, but and he's so attractive. I mean, that's the main thing. Like every time I see him, it's just he's got it all going for him, apart from crushing self-doubt, which I guess is God gives us all a challenge. Some greater than others. Do you want to talk Norway? Bit of Norway?
Yeah, Matthew Brennan.
This kid just can't stop.
Good at bikes.
Good. He's going to get.
He beat the Stavanger Stallion on home ground on Sunday.
Bit harsh. Oh, he's also retiring.
But that news has been breaking every week for the past 2 years, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But and Christoph is Christoph is almost twice the age of Brennan. I wonder if he looked at Brennan beating him over and over again and was like, no, screw this. This is ridiculous. Brennan is 19.
He's so good.
Christoph turns 38 next month.
Jeez.
Brennan then turns 20 the month after that, so it's not quite, But anyway, it's it's mad. Well, but Brennan's quite good at bike racing.
He's quite good. My main takeaway was the stage 3 finale, which happened twice because with 23k to go on one of the final loops, Picnic Post-NL's Colombian rider, which I didn't know they had one, or they allowed them to have fun and have like non-Dutch or riders in the team anyway, whatever. Juan Guillermo Martinez, he zoomed past Jelle Johanning, who you might remember from the Arctic race in Norway, where he won the Salmon Prize with the KOM jersey. So he zipped past him to go across the finish line first, put his hands up, then realised 23k to go. And then when it finally got to the real finish line, Maxim van Heels did celebrate, took his hands off his handlebars, and then after he got past the finish line, just crashed. Just like absolutely spoofed it. So it was very, very eventful at stage 3 of the Tour of Norway.
Kit, you were pointing out that it was nice to have a Grand Tour winner in Simon Philip Yates who was comfortable riding with hands off the handlebars. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, and you then pointed out that actually Pogacar's quite good at holding his hand off the bars, and that's true.
Yeah.
But it's
he can do wheelies and stuff.
He can do plenty. But yeah, it was Simon just looked very at home and it reminded me of many other times where we've seen bits of wobbles, and especially Roglic. I mean, Vingegaard sometimes seems a little bit fragile on the upright, but do you remember the Dauphiné year when Roglic won just before Vingegaard went and won the Tour de France? So they pedalled to the finish of the Queen stage at the Dauphiné together, and Vingegaard won. Well, I don't know. Vingegaard kind of pushed Roglic ahead and was almost helping him to get his hands off the bars, and Vingegaard made him. I don't know. Vingegaard looked like he was a circus performer next to Roglic, and that was coming from somebody who isn't necessarily always so sturdy on the.
Is this potentially related to the fact that Roglic falls down all the time? Possibly.
Yeah.
At some point, it's not luck.
Yeah.
At some point, it's not luck. Well, I think that's enough from us on this fabulous Monday. We were lucky, all of us, all of you out there. We were lucky to enjoy one of the best Giros I can recall, one of the best Grand Tours I can recall. And again, best does not always have to mean it's got Pogacar and Vingegaard in it. It can just be that every single day there was something new. All these fascinating storylines. We had fun. We had so much fun. We had so much fun last week. We had so much fun over the weekend. Hope you did too. We're going to wrap it up there. We're going to head to After Dark. Of course, we will be back with another show on Friday. And in that Friday show, we're going to talk about the Dauphiné, which starts on the 8th, starts this weekend. And so we are in officially Tour de France countdown. That's where we are right now. We are, today is Monday, June 2nd. The Tour de France starts on the July 5th.
4th.
Is that right?
5th?
Saturday, 4th?
5th.
Whatever that Saturday is in there.
32 days.
We are officially in Tour countdown. And Dane will be joining us again on Friday to talk through what is going on at the Dauphiné, what we might see, whether we're going to see sort of face-off, a little preview of the Tour, perhaps, at the Dauphiné. A preview of the Dauphiné as a preview of the Tour. Double preview. Anyway, we'll see you Friday. If you're a member, stick around. We're headed into After Dark. Thank you so much for being a member. If you're not a member yet, escapecollective.com/join. We've got tons of new members in the last couple of weeks. Thank you so much for jumping in. Make sure you get that member feed so you can hang out with us in After Dark. Let's go there.